In the 15th century, a European royal house paid for a shipment of this spice with an amount of money that could have bought a small estate. In medieval England, getting caught faking it could get you burned alive. Wars were fought over it. Entire economies were built on it. And today, that same spice sells for up to $10,000 a pound, making it, gram for gram, more valuable than gold right now in 2026. This is saffron, and its story stretches back further than almost any luxury on earth, through pharaohs, emperors, and criminals burned at the stake. To understand why a handful of red threads has driven humans to obsession for 3,500 years, we have to go back to the very beginning. The story starts in a cave. Roughly 50,000 years ago, in what is now Iraq, prehistoric humans ground up crocus flowers to make a rich golden yellow pigment and painted the walls of their caves with it. That was the first time our species reached for this flower. It would not be the last. But saffron as we know it, the spice, the luxury, the obsession, was born in the Bronze Age. On the Greek island of Santorini, archaeologists uncovered frescoes painted around 1600 BC. They show women in elegant robes gathering crocus flowers, plucking the delicate red threads, and collecting them in baskets to offer to a goddess. These paintings are over 3,600 years old, and they depict a harvest that looks almost exactly like the saffron harvest still happening today. To the ancient Minoans who painted those walls, saffron was sacred. It was medicine. It was dye. It was a gift fit for gods. And from that small cluster of Greek islands, the obsession began to spread across the entire ancient world. Everywhere saffron travelled, it became a symbol of power. In Egypt, Cleopatra reportedly bathed in saffron-infused water before meeting her suitors, convinced it made her more beautiful and desirable. Egyptian healers used it in their remedies, and it was scattered in the tombs of pharaohs to accompany them into the afterlife. Alexander the Great is said to have bathed in saffron to heal his battle wounds, and his soldiers carried the belief back across Persia and Greece. The Persians wove saffron threads into royal textiles and used it to dye the robes of kings. They even scattered it across the beds of newlyweds. And then came Rome, where saffron reached the peak of its ancient extravagance. Wealthy Romans stuffed their pillows with it. They scattered saffron threads through the streets during celebrations. They sprinkled it in public baths and theatres to perfume the air. When the Emperor Nero entered Rome, the roads ahead of him were strewn with saffron. It coloured the robes of the elite, flavoured the feasts of the wealthy, and announced to everyone watching that the person using it had money to burn. But then Rome fell, and saffron nearly disappeared from Europe entirely. For centuries after the empire collapsed, saffron faded from the Western world. Too expensive, too exotic, too tied to a civilization that no longer existed. Then, in the 8th century, the Moors swept into Spain and brought the flower back with them. They planted it across the sun-baked plains of La Mancha, and the crop took root so deeply that Spain still grows it there today. Even the name we use comes from this era. Saffron descends from the Arabic word za'faran, meaning yellow. As saffron flowed back into medieval Europe, its value exploded. And where there is value, there is fraud. Because saffron was worth its weight in gold, dishonest traders began cutting it, mixing the real threads with cheaper lookalikes. Marigold petals, dyed fibres, threads soaked in honey or oil to add weight. A buyer could pay a fortune and receive a bag that was half garbage. Medieval authorities responded with a brutality that tells you exactly how seriously they took this spice. In 15th century Germany, they created an entire court dedicated to policing saffron fraud, known as the Saffron Show. The punishments were savage. Some counterfeiters were fined into ruin, others were thrown in prison, and some, caught selling fake saffron, were burned alive or buried alive, right alongside their counterfeit product. Faking this spice was not a fine, it was a death sentence. And it went further than executions. It went to war. In the 14th century, a shipment of saffron worth an absolute fortune was traveling through Europe when a group of nobles hijacked it, stealing the entire cargo. The theft triggered a conflict that lasted 14 weeks. History remembers it as the Saffron War, an actual war, fought over a stolen crate of dried flower threads. So here is the question that the whole story has been building toward. If saffron has been coveted for 3,500 years, if empires bathed in it and criminals died for it, why has nobody ever made it cheaper? We've industrialized everything. We mass-produce food that was once reserved for kings. Why not this? The answer is the flower itself. Saffron comes from a single crocus, and that crocus hides a devastating secret. It cannot reproduce on its own. It's a sterile plant. It produces no viable seeds. Every saffron flower that has ever existed was planted by human hands, splitting and replanting the bulbs one by one. Without people, saffron would vanish from the earth entirely. And that's only the beginning of the problem. Each flower produces just 3 red threads. 3. To make a single pound of saffron, you need around 75,000 flowers, every one of them picked by hand. The flowers bloom for only 2 weeks a year, in autumn. Each blossom opens for barely a day, and they have to be harvested at dawn before the sun opens the petals and ruins the threads inside. There is no machine that can do this. There never has been. For 3,500 years, from the Minoan frescoes to the fields of Iran today, saffron has been gathered exactly the same way, by human hands, racing the sunrise, one flower at a time. Today, saffron is more available than at any point in history. Iran produces around 90% of the world's supply, followed by India, Spain, Greece, and Afghanistan. Global shipping puts it within reach of ordinary shoppers. But the price has never truly come down. Saffron still sells for between $2,000 and $10,000 a pound. At the top end, that's more expensive than gold by weight. Today, in the modern world, with all our technology. Because the one thing that has never changed is the harvest. The flower still can't reproduce without us. The threads still have to be picked by hand. The window is still 2 weeks a year, at dawn. Empires have risen and fallen. We've built machines that fly, that think, that fit in our pockets. And after 3,500 years of human obsession, we still can't find a faster way to gather 3 red threads from a purple flower. That's why they call it red gold. Not for its color, but because, like gold, it's something we can harvest but never manufacture. One of the last luxuries on earth that money still can't make any cheaper. If this changed how you look at that little jar of red threads, subscribe. There are stranger stories hidden inside everyday ingredients. Next one's right here.